I waited in my wedding dress for hours. My parents never came. But when they saw my Porsche online, suddenly I existed again. Picture this. Me, sitting in that bridal dressing room, my veil crumpled on the floor like discarded promises. My makeup smudged from tears I refused to let fall completely. The only light in that room came from my phone screen, burning my eyes as I stared at it, willing it to ring, begging for just one notification. Anything. A text. A call. Even a fucking emoji would have been something. But there was nothing. No missed calls. Not even one text. I remember looking at myself in that mirror, really looking, and seeing what I'd always been to them, invisible. Here I was, on what should have been the most important day of my life, and I was completely alone. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of trying to be seen, trying to matter, and on my wedding day, the one day parents are supposed to show up no matter what, they couldn't be bothered. The silence in that room was deafening. It wasn't just quiet, it was the sound of a lifetime of disappointment crystallizing into one perfect, devastating moment. This was my wedding day, and I was sitting there like a discarded doll, waiting for people who had already decided I wasn't worth their time. Before I tell you what happened after that post, please like this video, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Because unlike my family, I actually want to hear from you. You want to know where this all started? Let me take you back to when I was 8 years old, sitting at our kitchen table with paint under my fingernails and hope in my heart. I'd spent weeks working on this art project, a painted canvas of our family having a picnic. Every detail was perfect. I'd painted my mother's smile, my father's laugh, even got my brother's stupid calic just right. I remember running into the living room, practically vibrating with excitement, holding my masterpiece above my head like it was the fucking Mona Lisa. Mom, Dad, look what I made. My mother glanced up from folding my brother's soccer jerseys, because God forbid those get wrinkled, and gave me that look. You know the one. The look that says, "Not now, Caroline. Can't you see I'm busy with something important?" "That's nice, honey," she said, not even really looking. "Put it somewhere safe." Somewhere safe. You know where somewhere safe was? The junk drawer. Right between the dead batteries and the takeout menus. That's where my art went to die. But 20 minutes later, when my brother came home with his participation trophy, not even first place, just participation, suddenly the whole house came alive. Dad rearranged the mantle. Mom called Grandma. They took pictures. Posted on Facebook. Made a whole production out of a piece of plastic that said, "Thanks for showing up." And there I was, watching from the stairs, still with paint under my nails, learning the most important lesson of my childhood: my brother mattered, and I didn't. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was the pattern. The blueprint for how my family worked. Michael was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the future CEO, the pride and joy. Everything he touched turned to gold in their eyes. He got mediocre grades? He's focusing on sports. He crashed Dad's car? Boys will be boys. He quit 3 jobs in 2 years? He's finding himself. But me? I was the quiet artist. The one with unrealistic dreams. The one who needed to be more practical. When I made honor roll, crickets. When I won the state art competition, they forgot to pick me up from the award ceremony. I had to call my friend's mom for a ride home. "Be more like your brother," Mom would say, usually while she was ironing his shirts or packing his lunch or doing any one of the 1,000 little acts of love she performed for him daily. "He's focused on real things." Art is a nice hobby, Caroline, but you need to think about your future. Real things. As if creativity wasn't real. As if the hours I spent perfecting my craft, the way I could see beauty where others saw nothing, the fact that I could create something from nothing, as if none of that mattered because it didn't fit their narrow definition of success. I wasn't unloved, exactly. That's what made it so much worse. Unloved would have been easier to understand, easier to fight against. This was different. This was being loved in theory, but ignored in practice. It was having parents who would say they loved me if you asked them directly, but who consistently chose not to see me, not to celebrate me, not to show up for me. Do you know what that does to a kid? It teaches you that love is conditional, that you have to earn it. That maybe, if you just try harder, be better, achieve more, someday you'll be worth their attention. So I tried. God, how I tried. Fast forward to my wedding day. 2.5 years ago now, but it feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. I had planned everything myself, paid for everything myself. Every detail was perfect because I was desperate for it to be perfect. Maybe if it was beautiful enough, meaningful enough, special enough, they'd finally show up for me. Daniel kept reassuring me. Sweet, naive Daniel. They'll come, Caroline. Parents always show up for weddings. This is different. But I knew better. Deep down, I knew they wouldn't come. I'd known it for weeks, really. The RSVPs that never arrived. The phone calls that went straight to voicemail. The text messages that got read receipts but no responses. I knew, but I still hoped. Because hope is the cruelest thing of all. It keeps you believing when all evidence points to disappointment. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with this knot in my stomach. Not wedding nerves. I was excited to marry Daniel. This was different. This was the familiar ache of knowing I was about to be let down again, but somehow still holding on to that tiny, stubborn flame of maybe this time will be different. I got dressed in that bridal suite, surrounded by my bridesmaids who kept checking their phones for updates from my family. Any word, they'd ask, their voices careful and hopeful. I'd shake my head and they'd exchange those looks. You know the ones. The pitying looks that say, we know this is fucked up, but we don't know what to say. The ceremony was supposed to start at 4. At 3:30, I was still checking my phone. At 3:45, Daniel's mother came to find me. She didn't say anything, just took one look at my face and wrapped me in the biggest hug I'd ever received. You have a family now, sweetheart, she whispered into my hair. And I broke. Not the ugly crying kind of break. I didn't have time for that. Just the quiet kind where your heart cracks, but you keep functioning because you have to. Walking down that aisle, I saw their empty chairs. Front row, left side. Reserved for the family of the bride. Empty. Not just empty, conspicuously empty. Like missing teeth in a smile. Everyone could see it. Everyone knew. The violinist played Canon in D, the song Mom used to hum when she braided my hair on Sunday mornings, back when I was small enough to believe she loved me unconditionally. But she wasn't there to hear it. She was at home, probably watching her weekend cooking shows, completely unbothered by the fact that her daughter was getting married. During the vows, my hands shook. Not from nerves about marrying Daniel. I'd never been more sure of anything. They shook from the rage. The pure, burning rage at being abandoned again. At having to stand there and pretend I was okay when every guest in that room knew my own parents couldn't be bothered to show up. Daniel's parents filled the void as best they could. His mother cried during our first dance. His father walked me halfway down the aisle when we were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. They tried to love me enough for 4 parents, and I was grateful. But it wasn't the same. It couldn't be. The reception was beautiful. People danced. They ate. They celebrated us. But all night, I kept glancing at that empty table. The one I'd optimistically reserved, just in case. The one that mocked me with its pristine place settings and untouched centerpiece. At the end of the night, after everyone had gone home and Daniel and I were finally alone in our hotel room, I called them one more time. One last attempt to understand. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Dad's voice, "You've reached the Anderson family. Leave a message and we'll get back to you." I hung up without saying a word. What was there to say? They'd made their choice and it wasn't me. 2 years. 2 years of building a life without them. 2 years of learning to celebrate my own victories, to comfort myself through my own defeats, to show up for myself in all the ways they never did. My company, Aurora Motion, started as a way to channel my pain into something productive. I'd always been good with design, with seeing how things could be better, more beautiful, more functional. But now I had this burning motivation that I'd never had before. I wasn't just designing interfaces and user experiences. I was designing a life that didn't need their approval. Working 18-hour days became my meditation. Every successful project was a middle finger to everyone who told me art wasn't practical. Every satisfied client was proof that I had value, with or without their recognition. My team was small at first, just me and 2 developers I'd poached from my previous job. We worked out of my spare bedroom, living on coffee and determination. But we were good. Really good. We understood that design wasn't just about making things pretty. It was about making them feel right. Our first big break came when we redesigned the app for a major fitness company. The client had been through 3 other design firms, all trying to make it cool, or edgy, or whatever buzzword was trending. We made it simple, intuitive, human. The app downloads increased by 400% in the first month. Suddenly, everyone wanted to work with Aurora Motion. Growth was explosive. We moved into a real office. Hired more people. Started working with Fortune 500 companies. I was featured in design magazines, invited to speak at conferences, asked to judge competitions. And through it all, silence from my family. Not a congratulations. Not a we saw your interview. Nothing. It was like watching my success happen in a parallel universe where I didn't have parents. Where I'd sprung fully formed from the earth, already equipped with talent and drive, and no need for familial approval. My team became my family. They celebrated every victory with me, commiserated over every setback. When we signed our biggest contract yet, a complete digital transformation for an international retail chain, they surprised me with champagne and a cake that read, "You did it without them." I stared at that cake for a long time. Those words, "You did it without them." It was true, but it also hurt like hell. Because even as I was succeeding beyond my wildest dreams, part of me still wanted them to be proud. Still wanted to pick up the phone and hear my mother say, "I'm so proud of you, Caroline." The Porsche was never about the car itself. It was about everything the car represented. Freedom. Independence. The ability to go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without asking permission or approval from anyone. I'd driven practical cars my whole life. Reliable sedans that screamed responsible daughter. But success gave me options, and I decided I was done being practical for people who didn't appreciate it anyway. The day I bought it was perfect. Sunny. Warm. The kind of day that makes you believe good things are possible. I'd spent weeks researching, test driving, negotiating. This wasn't an impulse purchase. It was a statement. Sitting in the driver's seat for the first time, I felt something I'd never felt before. Power. Not over other people, but over my own life. This car was mine. Bought with money I'd earned. No one could take it away, diminish it, or tell me it wasn't practical enough. I drove it straight to the office, where my team was waiting with more champagne and ridiculous amounts of enthusiasm. "Boss got a new ride," Marcus shouted, and suddenly everyone was outside, admiring it like it was a work of art. Sarah, my lead developer, ran her hand along the hood and grinned at me. "This is what success looks like," she said. And for the first time in my life, I felt it. Really felt it. Success. Not the desperate, seeking kind I'd been chasing my whole life, but the quiet, confident kind that comes from knowing you've earned what you have. That night, I took a photo. Just the car, parked in front of the office building, the sun setting behind it. Beautiful. Triumphant. Complete. I posted it on Instagram with a simple caption, "Finally bought the dream car." Hard work pays off. I wasn't trying to show off. I wasn't thinking about my family at all, honestly. For once in my life, I was just sharing joy without agenda. Pure, uncomplicated happiness about something I'd achieved. For 3 days, the post got the usual response. Likes from colleagues, congratulations from friends, heart emojis from people who knew how hard I'd worked to get here. Normal social media interaction with people who were actually part of my life. Then, on day 3, my phone rang. I was in a meeting, presenting our quarterly numbers to the board, when I saw the name on my screen. Mom. I let it go to voicemail, obviously. I wasn't about to interrupt a board meeting for someone who couldn't be bothered to return my calls for 2 years. But seeing her name there, after all this time, made my stomach drop like I was falling from a great height. The voicemail was 3 sentences long. Caroline, we need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow at 2. It's important. No, how are you? No, congratulations on your success. No acknowledgement that she was calling someone she'd ignored for 2 years. Just the expectation that I'd drop everything and show up because she'd decided it was time. I played that voicemail 5 times, listening to her tone. Businesslike. Urgent. The way you'd talk to a bank manager or a contractor. Not the way you'd talk to a daughter you missed and wanted to reconnect with. The laugh that came out of me was sharp and bitter. They didn't come for my wedding, I said to my empty office. But they'll come for my wallet. Because that's what this was about. I knew it immediately. The timing wasn't coincidental. I post one photo showing I have money, and suddenly I exist again. Suddenly I'm family again. Suddenly they have time for a conversation. I should have ignored it. Should have blocked the number and continued living my life without them. But there was a part of me, the same part that had waited in that wedding dress, the same part that had painted that family portrait with such hope, that needed to see this through. I needed to look them in the eye and hear them ask for what I knew they were going to ask for. I needed the confirmation that their love had always been conditional, that I'd been right to give up hoping for anything else. So I cleared my schedule and drove to their house the next day. The house looked exactly the same. Same beige siding. Same overgrown hedges. Same broken porch light that Dad had been promising to fix for 15 years. It was like stepping back in time, except now I was the one with the nice car in the driveway. Walking up those front steps felt like preparing for battle. My heart was pounding, but not from nerves. From anger. Pure, clean anger that I'd been carrying for 2 years and was finally going to let loose. I knocked, even though I'd grown up there. Even though I probably still had a key somewhere. Knocking felt important. It established that I was a visitor now, not a daughter coming home. Dad answered. He looked older. Grayer. Smaller somehow, which was strange because he'd always seemed so imposing when I was a kid. He smiled, that fake smile people use when they want something. Caroline. Come in, come in. You look successful. Successful. Not beautiful. Not happy. Successful. Like that was the only metric that mattered now. The living room felt like a courtroom. Mom and Michael were already seated, arranged like a tribunal. Mom on the couch, Michael in Dad's old recliner, Dad taking his position behind them like he was chairing a board meeting. No one hugged me. No one asked how I was doing. No one commented on the fact that this was the first time we'd been in the same room since my wedding day that they'd skipped. Sit, Mom said, gesturing to the chair across from them. The defendant's chair. I sat and waited. I wasn't going to make this easy for them by asking what this was about. They'd called this meeting. They could explain themselves. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Dad cleared his throat and launched into what was obviously a rehearsed speech. Caroline, we're in a difficult situation. As a family, we need to stick together during tough times. As a family. I almost laughed. Now we were a family. He continued, Michael's business is going through some challenges. And we've had some unexpected expenses with the house. The mortgage is behind and... How behind? I interrupted. 3 months, Mom said quietly. We got the notice last week. Michael shifted in his chair. He wouldn't meet my eyes. This was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one they'd bet everything on while I painted pictures in my bedroom. What kind of business challenges? I asked, looking directly at him. He mumbled something about market conditions and bad luck, but I'd done my research the minute Mom called. His company, Golden Gate Consulting, was failing because he'd been cooking the books. charging clients for work he wasn't doing, billing hours for employees he didn't have, promising results he couldn't deliver. It wasn't bad luck. It was consequences. Dad slid a piece of paper across the coffee table. A loan agreement. Pre-filled with my name and a number that made my eyebrows raise. $200,000. We're not asking for charity, Dad said. This would be a loan. With interest. All official and legal. I picked up the paper and scanned it. The interest rate was laughable, barely above inflation. The repayment schedule was flexible. The collateral was non-existent. This isn't a loan, I said. This is an allowance for adults. Mom's face tightened. We raised you, Caroline. We put a roof over your head, food on your table, sent you to college. You sent me to community college, I corrected. Michael got the university education. I got told that art school was a waste of money and I should study something practical. We did our best with what we had, she snapped. Your best included missing my wedding. The room went dead quiet. There it was. The thing we'd all been dancing around. The thing they'd hoped I'd forgotten or forgiven. We explained that, Mom said defensively. We had that event. What event? My voice was getting louder. What event was more important than your daughter's wedding? More silence. There was no event, was there? You just didn't want to come. You didn't want to pretend to be proud of me for one day. You couldn't even fake it for the photos. Michael finally spoke up. You think you're better than us now because of your car? And there it was. The thing that had triggered this whole reunion. Not love. Not family bonds. Not wanting to repair our relationship. The car. The visible evidence that I had succeeded without them. No, I said, and my voice was steady now. Calm. I think I'm better than this. Better than begging for love disguised as approval. Better than pretending we're a family when you've never treated me like I belong to one. I opened my purse and I could see the hope flash across their faces. They thought I was reaching for a checkbook. Instead, I pulled out a brochure. This is where my money's going, I said, sliding it across the table. The Caroline Anderson Foundation for Young Female Artists. Full scholarships for girls whose families don't believe in their dreams. Mom picked up the brochure with shaking hands. You'd help strangers before your own blood? Blood abandoned me first. The words hung in the air like smoke. Final. Irreversible. Dad tried a different approach. Caroline, be reasonable. Family takes care of family. You have more money than you need, and we're struggling. This is what families do. Families show up for weddings, I said. Families return phone calls. Families celebrate each other's successes. You want me to act like family after you've spent my entire life proving I'm not really part of yours? I stood up, but I wasn't done. I had more to say. 2 years worth of things I should have said. You know what's funny? I spent so many years trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Why I wasn't good enough. Why my brother got love and I got tolerance. I thought maybe if I was prettier, smarter, more successful, quieter, louder, different somehow, you'd finally see me. My voice was getting stronger with each word. But there was never anything wrong with me. You just decided, when I was too young to understand, that he mattered and I didn't. And you stuck with that decision for 28 years. That's not true, Mom whispered. When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life, my friends, my dreams? When was the last time you said you were proud of me? Silence. I'll save you the trouble of thinking about it. Never. The answer is never. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Hit record. I want you to know that I'm recording this conversation. For my lawyer. Because this isn't a family reunion. This is attempted financial coercion. And I want evidence of exactly what you think I'm worth to you. Dad's face went red. You can't record us without permission. Actually, I can. This is a one-party consent state. Look it up. I turned the phone screen toward them so they could see the recording timer counting up. For the record, my parents and brother, who have had no contact with me for 2 years, who missed my wedding, who have never once called to congratulate me on my business success. are now demanding a $200,000 loan with no real collateral and terms that essentially make it a gift. Michael stood up. You're being a bitch, Caroline. I'm being honest. For the first time in this family, someone is being completely honest. I stopped the recording and put my phone away. Here's what's going to happen. I'm leaving now. You're going to figure out your own problems the way I've been figuring out mine for 2 years. And if any of you ever contact me again, I'll assume it's harassment and handle it accordingly. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Mom? That event you missed my wedding for? I'd love to know what it was. Because I called the country club and they didn't have anything scheduled that day. I called the church and they said you hadn't been there in months. So either you're lying about where you were, or you're lying about why it was more important than watching your daughter get married. Her face crumpled, and for just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. The old need to make her feel better, to take care of everyone else's emotions before my own. But then I remembered sitting in that bridal suite. I remembered the empty chairs. I remembered 2 years of silence. Goodbye, I said, and walked out. Driving away from that house felt like shedding skin. Like finally letting go of a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. But they weren't done. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Apparently, the family phone tree was alive and well when there was gossip to spread. Heard about the family meeting. Maybe you should reconsider. Your parents are good people going through a hard time. Blood is thicker than water, sweetie. The next day, it got worse. Someone, I'm betting Michael, had shared his version of events on social media. Poor, struggling family. Successful daughter refusing to help. Ungrateful child who forgot where she came from. The comments were brutal. People who didn't know the full story calling me selfish, cold, heartless. Strangers telling me I owed my parents everything because they'd sacrificed for me. It would have been easy to let it break me. To give in and write the check just to make the public shaming stop. That's what the old Caroline would have done. The Caroline who painted family portraits and hoped for crumbs of approval. But I wasn't that Caroline anymore. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I told my story. The real story. Not on social media. That felt too reactive, too defensive. I called a journalist I'd met at a conference. Someone who specialized in family dynamics and generational trauma. I told her everything. The favoritism. The missed wedding. The sudden reappearance when money was involved. She was fascinated. This is more common than you'd think, she said. Families treating successful members like ATMs while ignoring them as people. Would you be willing to go on record? The interview ran a week later in a major magazine. The daughter who disappeared, when family love comes with a price tag. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out to share similar stories. Successful women whose families had ignored them until they needed money. Adult children who'd been scapegoated and were now expected to fund their abusers' lifestyles. My foundation's website crashed from traffic. Donations poured in. Applications from young artists who'd been told their dreams weren't practical enough. A hashtag started trending, #SeeHerShine. Stories of women who'd succeeded despite family disapproval, not because of family support. Other journalists picked up the story. I was invited on podcasts, morning shows, panels about family estrangement and financial abuse. And through it all, my family doubled down. More social media posts painting me as the villain. More relatives calling to guilt-trip me. More attempts to control the narrative. But their credibility was shot. Too many people recognized the pattern. Too many had lived through similar experiences. Michael's business collapsed completely. The investigation into his fraudulent practices made local news. Dad had to take a part-time job at 67. They lost the house. I should have felt vindicated. Maybe part of me did. But mostly I felt sad. Sad for what we could have been if they'd been able to love me without conditions. Sad for the relationships that were never really relationships at all. A year later, I was mentoring a scholarship recipient named Emma. 18 years old, brilliant artist, family that called her passion a waste of time. She reminded me so much of my younger self it was almost painful. Do you think they'll ever understand? She asked me over coffee, showing me photos of her latest paintings on her phone. Does it matter? I asked her back. You're not painting for them. You're painting for you. She smiled, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never had at her age. Confidence. Self-worth. The knowledge that her value didn't depend on other people's opinions. My foundation portfolio is due next week, she said. Thank you for believing in me when my family won't. Sitting there, watching this young woman pursue her dreams without apology, I realized something important. I hadn't just built a successful business or made money or bought a car. I'd broken a cycle. No girl who received our scholarship would ever have to choose between her dreams and her family's approval. No young artist would have to believe that creativity wasn't real enough. No daughter would have to wait in a wedding dress for parents who'd never show up. That night, I drove my Porsche through the city as the sun set behind the skyline. Windows down, music up, the taste of freedom in the air. Once, I stood alone in a white dress, waiting for people who never came. Now, I stand surrounded by those who did, not because of blood, but because of belief. Not because they had to love me, but because they chose to. I thought about that little girl with paint under her fingernails, so desperate to be seen. I wished I could go back and tell her that she was enough. That her art mattered. That someday, she'd build a life so beautiful that she wouldn't need anyone's permission to live it. But maybe it's better this way. Maybe she had to learn to see herself before anyone else could. Maybe the pain was necessary to build the strength. Maybe abandonment was the gift that taught her independence. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Daniel, calling from his business trip. How was your day? He asked, and I could hear the genuine interest in his voice. This is what love sounds like, I thought. Someone who actually wants to know the answer. Perfect, I said, and I meant it. Because I'd finally learned the secret that had eluded me for 28 years. The only approval that matters is your own. The only love that can complete you is the love you give yourself. And the only family that counts is the one that shows up. I never heard from my parents again. No apology. No acknowledgement. No attempt to repair what they'd broken. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Because I built something better than what they took away. I built a life where showing up is non-negotiable. Where love doesn't come with conditions. Where success is measured not by other people's approval, but by how authentically you can live your truth. That little girl with paint under her fingernails finally learned to paint herself into the center of her own picture. And she lived colorfully ever after.